You are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bawa. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. US President Donald Trump has defended the Department of Government Efficiency's decision to cancel a $21 million fund designated for voter turnout in India, saying that India did not need such financial support. US and Russian officials held more than 4 hours of talks in Riyadh on Tuesday, their first on ending the war in Ukraine, as Kyiv and its European allies watched anxiously from the sidelines and Moscow raised a major new demand. European and other world leaders plan to hold a second emergency summit in Paris today as pressure grows to forge a cohesive response to Donald Trump's divisive plan to end the war in Ukraine. We also get you the lowdown on the Trump-Musk joint interview with Fox's Sean Hannity. India and Qatar have agreed to elevate ties to a strategic partnership, and an agreement in this regard was exchanged between our two nations. Qatar has committed to investing $10 billion in India across various sectors. Pope Francis has been diagnosed with double pneumonia after further tests showed a continuing complex medical situation. Well, our big focus, US President Donald Trump has defended the Department of Government Efficiency's decision to cancel a $21 million fund designated for voter turnout in India, saying that India, with its growing economy and high taxation rates, did not need such financial support. He said this while signing executive orders at his Mar-a-Lago estate. Donald Trump, in fact, questioned why the United States was actually giving $21 million to India, further adding that India is one of the highest taxing countries in the world and that the US can hardly get in here because our tariffs are so high. Now, as you know, this move had actually triggered a massive controversy here in India, with the ruling BJP criticizing the opposition Congress. But just listen in to what the US president had to say regarding this matter.
Well, why are we giving $21 million to India? They got a lot of money. They're one of the highest taxing countries in the world in terms of us. We can hardly get in there because their tariffs are so high. I have a lot of respect for India. I have a lot of respect for the Prime Minister. He just left, as you know, 2 days ago. But we're giving $21 million for voter turnout. It's voter turnout in India. What about, like, voter turnout here? Oh, we've done that, I guess. We did 500 million, didn't we? It's called the lockboxes.
In other crucial news, US President Donald Trump mocked the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as a poor negotiator and grossly incompetent. He said this as tensions continue to rise over the administration's direct talks with Russia about ending the war it launched nearly 3 years ago. But Donald Trump suggested that Ukraine was responsible for Russia's invasion of the country 3 years ago, arguing Kyiv could have made a deal to avoid the war. Trump did not mention that Russia has also failed to end the war it began when it invaded its neighbor. But the comments come amid criticism from European allies and many American intelligence experts that Ukraine and European nations invested in Ukraine's defense had been excluded from negotiations that began early on Tuesday between US and Russian officials in Saudi Arabia. Listen in to what the US president had to say. We have remarks from Zelensky lined up for you and the finer details as well.
And I think I have the power to end this war. And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way. And President Biden, in all fairness, he doesn't have a clue. What he was so bad for this. He was so bad, so pathetic, so sad.
Я переконаний, для України, для нашого регіону і для Європи принципово, щоб будь-які перемовини щодо закінчення війни відбувались не за спиною у ключових суб'єктів, яких зачіпають наслідки російської агресії.
Less than a month after Donald Trump took office and just 6 days after his call with Russian President Putin, top U.S. and Russian officials wrapped up over 4 hours of talks in Riyadh on the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The talks came as Kyiv and its European allies were sidelined and as Moscow introduced a significant new demand. The high-level talks, which were attended by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, aimed at strengthening ties and finding a resolution to the almost 3-year-long war. Rubio said that both parties agreed to restaff their respective embassies in Washington and Moscow and appoint high-level teams to continue negotiations. He also called the meeting the first step of a long and difficult journey, further adding that in order to bring an end to any conflict, there has to be concessions made by all sides.
For us to be able to continue to move down this road, we need to have diplomatic facilities that are operating and functioning normally. The second point is that we're going to appoint a high-level team from our end to help negotiate and work through the end of the conflict in Ukraine in a way that's enduring and acceptable to all the parties engaged.
Meanwhile, Lavrov called the talks very useful, adding that the two sides did not just listen, but heard each other.
Разговор был, я считаю, очень полезный. Мы не просто слушали, но и слышали друг друга. И у меня есть основания полагать, что американская сторона стала лучше понимать нашу позицию, которую мы на основе многократных выступлений президента Путина подробно на конкретных примерах изложили в очередной раз.
The talks came just as Russia announced a major new demand for NATO to scrap its 2008 promise to one day give Ukraine membership and for Kyiv to agree to neutrality. However, the Kremlin also said that Ukraine has a sovereign right to join the European Union, but that this sovereignty does not apply to military alliances. Conditions were discussed for a potential Trump-Putin meet, but no date has been set yet. Ukraine's absence from the negotiating table has sparked concerns in Kyiv and among European allies. Ukrainian President Zelensky has said that any outcomes from talks without Kyiv's involvement would be unacceptable. Samia Afsar, NDTV World.
Well, asserting that the initial round of talks had gone very well, Trump bristled at Zelensky's frustration over being excluded and at the Ukrainian president's decision not to fly to Riyadh for additional talks with the U.S. delegation this week. In fact, I must inform you that Trump also confirmed his interest in forcing elections in Ukraine as part of any diplomatic resolution to the war. Jessica Stone has more on this for us.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, for several hours in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on Tuesday. This is the most extensive contact between the two countries in 3 years' time. And afterwards, Rubio releasing a statement that says in part that Washington and Moscow are working towards, number one, closer cooperation and a restoration of their embassy staffs in their respective capitals, and number two, to create a high-level team to negotiate an end to the Ukraine war. In an interview that he gave to the Associated Press, he says that ending the conflict will require concessions from all sides, and he does see a role for Europe to play. He also said in that interview that this is the beginning of a conversation. It is also a conversation that needs to continue. Other U.S. officials, meantime, have said that NATO membership is really a long reach for the Ukraine to expect. It's unrealistic, and that the hope of completely returning all of the territory that Russia has gained is also unrealistic. They say that discussion of territory and security guarantees, though, will be a part of these ongoing talks. Now, Ukraine was not even present for these talks. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that he will not accept any outcome because he was not a part of these talks, and he wants, quote, robust and reliable security guarantees. He further canceled his meeting to Riyadh to meet with Keith Kellogg, the U.S. envoy to Ukraine. Europe also concerned about all of this taking place. On Monday, they held an emergency meeting in Paris where there was no agreement yet on deploying peacekeepers to Ukraine as part of any security deal. Jessica Stone, VOA News, Washington.
You must note that Russian state media, by the way, is covering this as their country's return to the top table of international politics. And as far as Moscow's state-directed media commentators were concerned, they saw it as a big win for the Russian president. And to Russian state media's evident delight, the sidelining of the Europeans and Ukrainian President Zelensky, they indicate, has firmly put them in their place. In fact, their exclusion is being being played as a big humbling of Europe and a humiliation for the Ukrainian leader. Meanwhile, European and other world leaders plan to hold a second emergency summit in Paris today as pressure grows to forge a cohesive response to Donald Trump's divisive plan to end the war in Ukraine. France has planned to host the second meeting to discuss Ukraine and European security today, but has this time invited European countries not present earlier this week, as well as NATO ally Canada, as per reports. Now, those invited, as per reports, are Norway, Canada, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia. Also invited the Czech Republic, Greece, Finland, Romania, Sweden, and Belgium. Further adding that the format would actually be hybrid, including video participation for this summit that's being held in Paris. Switching tracks now, Qatar and India have agreed to elevate their ties to a strategic partnership, and an agreement in this regard was exchanged between our two nations. Now, this decision was announced after a meeting between our Prime Minister and the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, in New Delhi. The focus of the meeting, the Ministry of External Affairs has informed us, was on enhancing trade, investment, technology, energy, food security, culture, as well as enhancing people-to-people ties. Our two sides also discussed the potential of a free trade agreement and also planned on doubling trade to $28 billion. This is within the next 5 years.
We invite India's investors and entrepreneurs to explore the full potential of Qatar's economy in infrastructure, technology, and beyond. And we are ready to take decisive steps to fast-track negotiations for a new bilateral investment promotion and protection agreement. Moreover, we seek to revitalize the Trade, Economic, and Technical Joint Commission, ensuring that our economic ties are not just maintained, but strengthened with clear direction, real action, and measurable results.
And in other news, Pope Francis has been diagnosed with double pneumonia after further tests showed a continuing complex medical situation. This is what the Vatican has confirmed in its latest statement. The pontiff, who's 88 years old, underwent a chest X-ray which demonstrated the onset of bilateral pneumonia that required further pharmacological therapy. But Pope Francis had been hospitalized in Rome. This is since the 14th of February after battling a respiratory infection for over a week. Let's switch tracks now. I must inform you that Hamas says it will hand over the bodies of 4 hostages on Thursday, including the 2 youngest people held by the Palestinian armed group. In exchange, Israel will free all women and those under the age of 19 arrested since last October, and is allowing some rubble clearing equipment into Gaza. This is through the border with Egypt. My colleague Mohammed Ghazali, as always, has been tracking the finer details for us. He joins us live at the moment. Ghazali, take us through the latest developments.
See, Hamas has agreed to release 6 more hostages, and that also includes 6 live hostages. There are 4 bodies which are being told that Hamas will return. There are also bodies of people who have been in captivity for over a decade. 2 hostages who were held in Gaza for a decade will also be released. So that certainly shows that the kind of ceasefire negotiations which have been going on in the background by Qatar, by Egypt, and despite the US and Israeli pressure, things seem to be working out in a positive direction, that Hamas has not created any kind of bottleneck before releasing these hostages. And this is also going to be the 6th or 7th week where Hamas will be releasing these hostages on Saturday. And perhaps after that, because Mr. Netanyahu, Mr. Trump, and other negotiators are also engaged in now initiating the second stage of the ceasefire, which also involves that how Israel will completely pull out of Gaza, and then the next stage of reconstruction of Gaza will be discussed. So this release of 6 hostages will certainly pave the way for more peace and security in the region, is what analysts believe in the Middle East.
As always, Ghazali, thanks so much for joining us with the lowdown. News and updates continue in a moment, right after this very short break. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. Well, Donald Trump is considering imposing 25% tariffs on key imports like automobiles, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals. The new duties could be announced as soon as the 2nd of April, as per a Bloomberg report, and are expected to widen the ongoing trade war affecting consumer products. Now, as you know, Donald Trump previously introduced 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium, which are set to take effect in March. And his latest proposal marks the most detailed outline yet of sectors facing fresh trade barriers. This also reflects on a significant shift in the United States trade policy that could impact global markets. Let's take you to the United Kingdom now. Well, as UK-India trade talks resume this month in New Delhi, NDTV had a chance to catch up with the Lord Mayor of London, Alistair King. Just last year, in fact, the UK's trading relationship with India was worth £42 billion and supported over 6 lakh jobs across both our countries. Now, Alistair King says he looks forward to further collaboration between our two nations. Listen in to what he told NDTV.
Hello everyone, welcome to the special interview session. I have a special guest with me, Lord Mayor of London, Alistair King. In fact, he is in Mumbai to strengthen Indo-UK relationship, and he will also tell us how he plans to sort of collaborate with us even better in the years to come. Thank you, Mr. King, Lord Mayor of London, for joining us on this important discussion. Let me start by asking you how your trip to Mumbai has been. This is not your first trip to Mumbai. You've worked here before for several years. You have been meeting thought leaders, financial industries, several from business sector as well. Take us through your meetings here and what your key takeaways from these meetings have been.
Well, first of all, it's lovely to be back in Mumbai. It's a city that I really like, and marvellous electricity and energy to it, which is so fabulous to be back. The Lord Mayor of London is a remarkable role. The Lord Mayor is the global ambassador for the United Kingdom's financial, professional, legal and maritime services. Represent 2.4 million people in the United Kingdom, which is 1 in 13 of the workforce, and responsible for about 14% of GDP. So it's a very substantial sector of the UK economy. I've had a remarkable few days here in Mumbai. I've been meeting business leaders, of the very top business leaders. I've been meeting the head of the stock exchange, of SEBI, of the Reserve Bank of India. And I think really my job has been to try and talk about where are the opportunities that are for British businesses trying to do business here, more business here in India, and also where are the opportunities for Indian businesses to invest into the United Kingdom.
All right. Also, the UK-India trading relationship is valued at £41 billion annually, approximately. So in light of recent global, trade tensions, how do you sort of envision the partnership between India and UK sort of evolving? And what are the strategies to sort of mitigate some of the challenges as well? What are some of the strategies to enhance financial cooperation and collaboration between the two countries?
I think there are enormous opportunities to grow the relationship, financial relationship between India and the United Kingdom. We have remarkably sort of strong links between the two countries. We've also have some great examples of investment both ways, from India into the United Kingdom and also United Kingdom into India. We've got some very famous companies doing that, and many examples of that. But I think we certainly, from the United Kingdom point of view, we've been a little bit less adventurous in relation to going to remarkable developing and high growth markets such as India. And I think part of my role is to encourage British businesses to go and look at the extraordinary opportunity here in India, growing at 6.5%, and just saying, here are the opportunities, go and take them.
And I'd like to know more about your Growth Unleashed mayoral theme. What does it entail? I mean, it's obviously about mutual investment. So what initiatives are being introduced for perhaps UK businesses to invest in India? How are you planning to encourage more UK businesses to invest in India, and vice versa, for Indian businesses to sort of see UK as a market? So take us through this entire initiative, which is Growth Unleashed.
the premise is the fact that your financial and professional services, legal services and maritime services, that's where the growth is going to come from in the United Kingdom in the early years of this new government. Because the building's already built, the people are already trained, the regulatory system is not perfect, but it's world class. The missing ingredient is confidence, and so I'm trying to instill confidence into British businesses to go off to remarkable dynamic markets such as India. So what measures can I do to install more confidence? It's by leading by example, to go and see some of the remarkable business people here in India and try and work out new ways of doing business together. And I think also seeing those businesses talking about the foreign direct investment opportunities into the United Kingdom. So it's a two-way process.